Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Taking Environmental Action speaker series. I'm Sophia Peltz, your host and the Sustainability Coordinator for the Berkeley Unified School District, as well as a Climate Corps Fellow. I'm so excited to welcome Shea Robinson. Shea is the Sustainability Coordinator for Nugget Markets, a local family-owned grocery store chain in Sacramento, Marin, and Sonoma. She graduated from UC Davis with a degree in sustainable agriculture and food systems. For the last 4 years, she has been working to educate her associates and guests about sustainability. As a self-identified foodie, she wants to help people better understand where our food comes from and who grows it. She thinks of her work as a honeybee. One bee won't pollinate very much, but a swarm of bees gives us 1/3 of our current food production. There will also be time for a Q&A after our conversation, so please use the Q&A chat box to submit your questions, and they can be answered at the end. So hi, Shea, it's great to have you here and to see you again.
Hi, Sophia. Thank you so much.
So I'd love to start off by asking you what got you involved with Nugget Market and kind of what is your personal journey to the field?
Yeah, sure. So, actually, my whole life I've been an avid reader and writer. So, in high school, I thought an English degree or something along those lines. And then I took an environmental science class in high school, my junior year, and it just blew my mind. I wanted to know everything about it. And the more I started researching colleges, the more I realized what I was actually interested in was our food system and wanting to know where our food came from, how it was grown, how it gets to our plate, and then where it goes out when we're done with it. And so in my research, that landed me in UC Davis and the degree Sustainable Ag and Food Systems. As of 2012, when I first applied, that was the only school in the country that was doing anything like it. Since then, the universities across the country have cropped up, and of course, you have state schools and double A's you can get in that field. But that was a first 4-year degree. And so then when I found the sustainability coordinator position at Nugget Markets, I just jumped on it. I had done production related internships and volunteering, but I hadn't gotten to see the retail side. So I was really excited to get to see that firsthand.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's so cool. I've heard UC Davis has like a huge program on food systems and ag, and Santa Cruz also has one now, and I think UC Berkeley has one. So they're popping up all over now,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is super cool that it's just getting more exposure and the field is growing. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your specific role, like what does being a sustainability coordinator at Nugget Market mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one I get a lot because those are two really big words, right? Sustainability and coordinator. They're like, that's a mouthful. What do you even do? Most of the time I'm in stores and I do walks of each of our stores. We have 16 locations. And so I'm making sure the program is running smoothly, that associates know what the best practices are. I'm overseeing the waste, energy, and water. So all of our usage, as well as all of the guest and associate education. So making sure they understand what does sustainability mean, how do they interact with it on a day-to-day basis, why is it important to them, why is it not just this other thing we're putting on their plate, like why are we asking them to engage in it in the first place, and then hopefully letting our guests know how we're involved in it and that this is something we care about.
Hmm. And the fact that your position even exists at a
Yeah.
chain store, I mean, I know it's family owned, but that's pretty unique and pretty incredible. Um,
I agree. Yeah, I would love to expand my network and touch base with other grocery stores that are doing similar things, but it's hard to find. I feel like the only contact I've made is Oliver's in the Bay has a sustainability coordinator as well. And they're smaller. They've got 4 stores, but yeah, most retailers don't have one. And so yeah, I do feel extremely lucky to work for a company that hires someone like me.
Yeah, so cool, especially when the whole system has to do with food. It kind of works out perfectly. So I'm wondering if you could explain how Nugget Market prioritizes sustainability, and you kind of touched on that a little bit, but maybe expand. And it's kind of a two-part question as well. Like, what are some examples of sustainability related projects that you're working on right now?
So as we said, we prioritize sustainability because we have a position dedicated to it. So they entrust me to set the vision, and our vision is to be a sustainable leader in our industry with a focus on social responsibility, environmental stewardship, and economic vitality, or the three pillars of sustainability. So that's been a huge focus for me is when I'm explaining sustainability to our associates, I talk about seeing sustainability, so just capturing the acronym of the social, environmental, and economic aspects in order to sort of make it more tangible for them as they're interacting, right? So why do we compost, right? It's California law, so that's a good reason. It's the right thing to do. That's a good reason. But why do we actually do it? We do it because it's recycling. We're getting it out of the landfill, so we reduce greenhouse gases. We're getting to recycle all these nutrients back into the soil, and then we're growing healthier plants. So then we're creating healthier people. It's just like a win-win-win all the way around. And so that is, one of the ways we try to explain it to our associates and try to connect them with that. And that's ultimately the big project that I have in my hands right now is just that education, because sustainability is really complex. Things are always changing. Regulations are always changing. We're in 7 different counties, and every county has different waste guidelines, water, energy. So it's just trying to make it make sense for my associates who don't have a degree in this stuff, and trying to have it make sense for me so I can break it down for them.
Totally.
Yeah, education, that's the big one.
It's super complex, and I kind of want viewers to understand the dedication that Nugget Markets has dedicated to sustainability. And so it's not just your position, right? Like, don't you guys have a team of people who are like the green team? You want to explain a little bit about
Sure.
that?
Yeah, so I'm at the corporate level, but then we have green gurus, is what we call them, at every store. So they are like the sustainability specialist for their store. And so that's my team. And so I'll set the vision. We'll talk about sort of bigger goals company wide, but it's really those green gurus who are breaking it down at the store level and having those one-on-one conversations with their associates on the daily. Yeah. And I do walks every month in every store with my green guru, and so I have a chance to touch base with the associates as well, but that's only once a month versus what they're doing every day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And that's like the unique thing. It's not just a sustainability coordinator. It's kind of
Right.
like at each store, they kind of have like a team of people working towards these goals.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to be specialized, right? Because
Mhm.
the Sonoma market isn't going to function the same as a Marin market versus a Sacramento market. So even though we are one company, the makeup of the type of associates who go to, work at the store are different. The guests who come into a store are different. So sustainability has to look a little different in each place. Yeah.
No, totally. That makes sense. And I kind of want to get a little bit more into the details of so how do you guys deal with food waste, which I know is a big topic in California, and lots of new legislation is dedicated to this. So I'm curious, kind of what do you guys do?
Yeah, so in all of our stores for the food waste, so everything that is no longer edible, so that's the juice pulp from our coffee bar, right, or the coffee grounds, or if we're making meals in the kitchen, it's the ends of the strawberries, right? It's all those things you can no longer eat. That ends up in a green waste bin or an organics bin, and then we either work with the local waste hauler, or we have a partner called California Safe Soil, and they're based out of Sacramento, and they turn it into fertilizer. So no matter what, that food waste is getting turned into some kind of product that's going back into the soil. But before it even gets there, we have our food recovery program. So that's all of the edible food. So everything we don't sell, but is still edible, then we work with our local food banks and agencies in every county in order to get that food to people in need. And last year, we donated 800,000 pounds of food. So it's a substantial amount, especially in 2020 when hunger rose considerably. I mean, we already deal with hunger in our communities. I mean, I think in Yolo County, it's 1 in 5 people are food insecure. So, and then again, that rose during 2020. So yeah, that food recovery piece is really important. Again, hitting all 3 pillars of sustainability. And it's just having those conversations and setting up those best practices within the store as to why we need to take the time to when we're pulling that product, make sure if it's edible, it's going this one route. If it's not edible, but it's compostable, and it's going this one route, and it can't all go into the landfill.
Totally. And there, I feel like that has to do with like implementing a lot of structure and like knowing, having a lot of partners as well.
Yes.
You were just talking about like the food banks and
Yeah.
knowing which communities or which store locations are the most food insecure.
Yeah, the food banks are amazing. We are really lucky to have such great partners. Like Yolo Food Bank, for instance, has been our partner for decades, and they're really trying to make a difference in their community. In Marin, we work with Extra Food. They're also incredible, and they just have this huge network of agencies that is making sure that food, when they pick it up, is getting directly to people that day. And we donate across all food categories. So most people are surprised to hear like, oh, you can't donate dairy or eggs because there are issues with food safety. No, absolutely, we can donate that. We just keep it at the right temperature, or
Oh, okay.
produce, right? Like a lot of these highly nutritious foods don't necessarily always end up at food banks. So that's our focus, is making sure that's getting out.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that because when I think of a food bank, I think of canned foods,
Yep. Shelf
non-perishables,
stable.
which are
Yeah.
not necessarily the most nutrient dense foods. So it's really good to hear that like you guys are sorting through and trying to figure out, how can these whole foods be supplied to people who wouldn't otherwise have them.
And that's why the food banks are incredible, because your tiny agency won't necessarily have the refrigeration or the capacity to house it. But if they're linked up with their food bank, then there's more ability to move that food and get more people access to it.
Mhm. And kind of shifting gears here, I'm just trying to figure out, like, get more details on the things that you guys do. I'm wondering what measures you take to conserve energy, because I know energy is a part of your sustainability mission and kind of how you tackle that pillar.
Yeah, great question. So the biggest thing when I was explaining about just educating my associates on what sustainability means, a big piece of that is just getting them to think about it. If we're thinking about it, then we get to create those mindsets, and we're probably functioning in terms of trying to save or conserve. If we're not thinking about it, then it's definitely not even on our brain, right? So if you were raised in a household where you always had to turn off the lights before you left the room, you're going to do that at work. But a lot of people at work didn't get raised with that. So it's like literally creating a new neural pathway to have them remember, on top of everything else in their day, when they leave a walk-in cooler, they have to hit those lights. So it's just in general having that energy conscious mindset, turning off lights when we leave the walk-in coolers, not leaving machines on necessarily, like in our coffee bar. If you're juicing a fresh smoothie, it might be easier to leave the juicer running as you're finishing up, but that's not the most energy efficient. And then I have a really great team partner with our operations team. So as equipment starts to fail or starts to have issues, they automatically upgrade it with the newest, most energy efficient option. So that's part of sustainability too, right? Like we might be functioning with an energy inefficient appliance because there's a new one on the market, but we also don't want to scrap something that's still functional. So it's like finding that line between when does maintenance now cost more and is worse for the energy than just replacing it. But they're really good about that. Before I came in, we retrofitted our stores with LED lighting. So that was one of the biggest, right? The LED light bulb became better than the CFO, which was better than the incandescent. Sustainability is always shifting. And so that was a big shift that happened before I came. And so I guess the big thing for me is keeping up on trends and finding what that next big thing is. One of the things that we just implemented in the Sacramento Valley stores was we're partnering with Bloom Energy, and they are an energy source that doesn't use combustion. So it's 100% less water and fewer greenhouse gases. So it's more energy efficient. They're based off of fuel cells instead. And so that's one of the things that our company is really excited about, because that means we will always have a reliable source of energy. So no more blackouts or anything that might happen that would really affect our food and therefore increase food waste during those times. Fires, right? Any of the things we just witnessed in the last year, and be able to really provide that service to our guests. That's the ultimate goal.
How cool. That's
Yeah.
like super innovative. um, I'm also wondering just how the pandemic as a whole, we haven't really touched on that yet, but how that has shifted what you guys do, if it has. I know grocery stores were really hit hard, and the structure of them has changed. I'm kind of wondering what that shift was for you guys.
Well, we kind of always knew we were a social hub. I mean, people came to us because they enjoyed the service. You come to a Nugget Markets and people remember your name. It's that good sense of camaraderie and community. And that became really clear during COVID because we were an essential service and that was the one place you could still go. So you might be shut in your house and trying to be safe, but for that one weekly grocery store trip, you got to like reconnect a little bit. So that became really important. In terms of sustainability, it was really shifting from long-term sustainability goals to short-term safety goals, right? So in order to manage people's emotions, people's fears, people's anxieties, it really just became like, hey, thank you for showing up to work today. What do you need to get through this day? Hey, thank you for still shopping with us. What do you need from our guests? And really just trying to keep that balance while keeping everyone safe, right? Trying to manage, an executive team every day, every minute was like, okay, what's the newest CDC regulation? What is OSHA saying? Like, how are we really making sure that we're a world-class employer by providing a safe space for our associates to work and a safe space for our guests to shop. And so that was, immediately rolling out the masks. And we were one of the first retailers that required masks for everyone coming into our stores. We still require it, and then increased sanitizing and cleaning policies every half an hour, every hour, every 2 hours. Making sure as much as we had control over that it was a clean environment and that nothing was going to get transmitted.
Makes sense, makes sense. And I love the fact that it's a community hub. That just kind of reminds me of my own life, and how I feel like I've started frequenting my grocery store more often, but like getting only the things that I need, and like it being like the one time that I go outside. So really
Right.
enjoying that time.
Right, exactly. And it's interesting when we talk about purchasing our food. There are definitely two models, right? You stock up for 1 week or 2 weeks. And that was a really big push from the CDC to say, like, don't go out as often, really stock up. And then there's this alternate food movement or idea of shopping, which is no, you go to the store, you buy what you need for those next couple of days, and then you go again the next couple of days because then you're not having food waste. You're planning for what you're eating, like in that day. And so it's an interesting that balance, especially as we're talking about sustainability, because we know that if you go to the store hungry, you buy way more than you need. And you might buy more than you can really plan or eat for, especially if you're going with those perishable products. So yeah, it's an interesting just case study.
No,
And
no, I think that's so true. And I think so many people have realized during COVID, like a lot of what we're doing in sustainability in our positions has like butt up against like COVID standards, maybe sort of. um, can you hear me? Sorry, you just cut out a little bit.
yeah, I think I froze. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I do find myself like the more if I do those big shops, I'm wasting tons of food because I can't eat all that food at once. And yeah, it's also like says so much about how food creates community, how it's like the one binding thing that we all kind of have to do. So like if you sit down for a meal and you don't politically agree with each other or whatever it may be, it seems to always bring people together,
Yeah,
which is the beauty of food. um,
absolutely.
yeah, but now that we're speaking about food, I'm wondering if you can give the audience some context on maybe the procurement, or not maybe the procurement, but the difference between organic and conventional food prices. And I know you guys source a lot of organics, so I'm wondering if you want to explain that to somebody who may be going to the grocery store and seeing those price differences themselves, but not understanding the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of misinformation and there's just a lot of information you get even just from a grocery store. It's hard to know what all these labels mean. So no, I loved that you are asking this question. Um, the best way that I think about organic versus conventional is that the larger price tag is a value added item. So a lot of times when we're purchasing things, whether it's a new shirt or anything in that category, the price tag is really just a bump for the business to make money. When it comes to food, that's really not the case. It's not the full story. What you're paying for is how that food was raised, whether you're talking about an animal or you're talking about a plant that was grown. So everything that is in the price markup is going to what it means to be certified organic. So organic is the only federally regulated label. So everything else, whether it's sustainable or fresh or local, businesses can really just slap that on anything. It's not regulated by anything. Organic has 4 very specific criteria that farmers have to meet. So one, the land has to be organic or has been maintained without synthetic inputs for at least 3 years. So that's a good book of time. I mean, they want their organic farmers to be like in it for the long haul. And then as they grow their crops or raise their animals, they also have to continue not to use synthetic inputs. And those inputs are fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, like anything they would do in order to help protect their crops. They have to be engaged in soil health practices like crop rotation. So it's not just an extractive system where, you're raising broccoli and you take it out of the ground and then that's it. It has to be constantly replenishing the soil in order to be able to grow new crops for the next season, working within an ecosystem rather than seeing it as what you need to get from it. And then finally, in terms of if you're raising animals, you have to consider some of the animal welfare. And so you have to provide living conditions that support their health and their natural behavior. And so because of these things, I mean, you can even imagine how much extra work that takes. And so that's what you're paying for when you pay for something organic is you're saying, I value soil health. I value, animal welfare. I value these things and I'm going to put my dollar to that.
I love that explanation. Thank you for that. I think there's so many misconceptions about organic and the title and the confusion between that and greenwashing, which is exactly what you were talking about, how people slap on like sustainable, local, earth friendly, whatever it may be.
And none of them mean anything. That's the
Yeah.
problem. And so it sounds great. Green is another one. That's why it's called greenwashing.
Yeah.
So at least you can trust the organic label that there are a certain set of criteria. Now, not all organic products are created equal, right? You can have an organic farm that's following those basic practices, but is not following them holistically or not following them spiritually or however you want to say it. And then you can have an organic farm that is like living, breathing organic, and they probably have all these other labels too. It's just that's the one that really means the most because it's regulated.
Yeah, of course. I think there are probably quite a few farmers, and I know it's really hard. It's expensive to purchase that label and to maintain it. So I think there are probably quite a few farmers who actually have organic practices, but they can't necessarily afford.
And you see that at the farmers market, for instance, right? They'll say like raised with organic practices. That's how they get around it. And that goes back to talk to the farmer and say, tell me more. Like, what does this mean for you?
Yeah.
Because, one of the arguments, sustainability is complex, to have a sustainable decision means there isn't an easy yes or no answer. It means you had to balance the economic, social, and environmental pillars and try to make the best decision with what you had. So there are organic farmers who might be using natural inputs, but the argument could be, well, it's actually causing more damage than a synthetic input for this and this reason. It's like, yes, there's not necessarily, it's not like wholly good or wholly bad, right? It's this gray area. And that's one of the things. Organic certification is expensive. So if you're a small enough farm where that doesn't make sense, but you follow all those practices, then have that conversation, with them and be able to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think I also don't know the whole list of the dirty dozen, but I think that's a good place for people to start. Is if you can't afford the increased prices, like start from like where it's most essential to have the least amount of pesticides in your fruits and veggies.
No, that's a good way to think about it. I haven't thought about the dirty dozen in a while.
Neither have I, but when you said that, it came to my mind.
Yeah. What I try to tell people, because once they find I majored in it or what my job title is, they'll say like, okay, so tell me what to do. Like, tell me what to buy. What's the best food, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, what do you care about? Because we don't have, like, no one person except maybe, Jeff Bezos, no one person has the money to buy every single thing that is value added. So you unfortunately you have to pick and choose. So if animal welfare is what you're really interested in, great, then buy products that support that, right? Or if farmers making a living wage is really important to you, then go after that. Or if, ecosystem health is really important to you, then go after that. But you can't buy pasture raised eggs and grass fed beef and only local organic produce. And like, it starts to be really expensive because you're paying for these values, and our budgets don't stretch that much generally, especially if we're talking about students. And so, I would say, like, take a look at, where your values are and how much energy you have to devote, because ultimately even that store of energy isn't an infinity. You have to decide, like, okay, I'm going to take the time to really understand, going off of cage free eggs, like, okay, that's the big thing right now. What does that mean? What's the difference between cage free and free range and pasture raised? Like, what does that mean? And am I willing to spend $8.99 or $9.99 on eggs versus the $3.49? What is that difference?
Totally. I think asking ourselves those questions and like being able to at least do one of them, it's like you said, it's so hard to try to pull yourself in all these different directions, and also feel like really overwhelmed by the amount of advertising that goes into all of these things. And kind of going back to greenwashing, like you actually have to do quite a bit of research on your own to be able to distinguish what is what. And so, yeah, choose like what you're passionate about and where your values lie. And once you figure that out, I think that's like a good starting place. Um,
It's always I think it's easy once you start to learn about this stuff, to sort of fall down the rabbit hole and say, wow, nothing matters, because it's
yeah,
so complicated. But exactly like you said, choose one thing and start to make that change. And then once that's solidified, you can do the next thing, but just make that small change wherever it is, wherever you're at.
totally. And when it comes to Nugget Market procuring food, I'm curious how much of an effort goes to purchasing local organic food products.
Yeah, so across the store, we have about 13 to 14% local and then 13 to 14% organic. So that is definitely a focus. I mean, we want to support the communities we're a part of, and we're in California. We're in a very agricultural heavy area. And so we look for that, absolutely. I mean, we're not a huge grocery store by any means, but the vendors that work with us do need to be of a certain size in order to supply the amount of food needed, even at a store by store level. So for instance, in West Sacramento, our location will work with Center for Land-Based Learning and some of those smaller plot farms. And so, like, when blueberries are in season, we'll work with that one farmer to procure those blueberries. But there still has to be like a minimum threshold in order to even make it for that season. But we will do that. So, I mean, he doesn't have to supply, all the blueberries for all the stores just in that local area. And that's the good thing about being so hyper local, is we can get Sonoma sourced things, like they actually have, at our Sonoma Market, like one of their center islands of produce just says Paul's Produce. It's Paul down the road, and
I
it's awesome.
love that.
And so we'll do that on like a more of a hyper local area. But yeah, in terms of trying to get into all the stores, it would need to be a little bit bigger. Another partner that I really like talking about is Henry's Bullfrog Bees, or Pure Honey. They sell at farmers markets in the area as well, and they're based out of Winners, so just on the road. But it's just, it's a mom and dad and the daughter, and they produce all this. The dad's the beekeeper, and the mom and daughter sort of paired together to like hand bottle all this honey, and you can just taste it. It's delicious. And yeah, so but they over time have had to ramp up production as the need rose, and also just as supporters of bee ecosystems, right? Like, that's an ebb and flow in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and has it been, I'm just curious if it's been challenging at all to work directly with local farmers during this time. Like, are there policies that get in the way of that, or has it been like kind of smooth sailing?
Um, so I mean, we saw the news articles about farmers that had suddenly lost the distribution to like restaurants, wholesale, and
That's
schools.
what I'm curious about. I read that
Where,
too.
yeah, all their items. I feel like the local producers had an easier time because they weren't necessarily as big as wholesalers.
Mhm.
So I think one of the benefits of being local is that you're only producing enough food for your local area. And again, local is not regulated. So we could say 100 miles, 400 miles, California grown, right? There's different amounts, but that's going to be different than Chile, or that's going to be different than, on East Coast or something like that. And I want to say like those bigger farmers that really struggled were sort of like in the Midwest, or we're used to, um, these large surpluses, because we've kind of banked on this bigger agriculture versus the smaller scale agriculture.
Totally. Thank you for describing that distinction. I think that's really important to think about. And I asked you that question because just that article was flooding back to my mind. And I was thinking, oh, maybe you had read it too.
Oh yeah.
But our conversation is coming to a close. I'm wondering if you have any resources or ways that people can be involved, that you want to plug in, whether it be, a book, a podcast, a way to support Nugget Market. And I know you studied food systems, so yeah, anything, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm love talking about sustainability. I could do this forever. So people are more than welcome to contact me. It's just sustainability at nuggetmarket.com. We also have a sustainability webpage, and there's all kinds of information on what we do. There's a sustainability report from 2020. And then I also write a sustainability article each month for we call it the Daily Dish. It's a blog. So that's another way to get more information. In terms of like podcasts or books that have inspired me, I really enjoyed reading We Are the Weather by Jonathan Safran Foer. That was awesome. I love Joel Salatin, so I'll read anything by him. Stuffed and Starved by Raj Patel was a really good read, just eye-opening, in terms of what's happening in our food system globally. Farming While Black by Leah Penniman, and then Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Also great. What's awesome in terms of being connected with the University of California is the University of California Press produces so much good work, because across the whole system, you've got researchers interested in all different aspects. All different aspects in general, but definitely of the food system. So, definitely check those out. And then I do have a bunch of different like websites I really like. I can send those to you, and then maybe you can
Yeah,
share them.
I can send them out to people, and that would be amazing. Thank you for sharing, by the way.
Yeah. Here, I'll drop them in the chat right now. Oh, I'll email them to you.
Yeah, okay, that's perfect. Well, I'm so excited that we got to chat, and yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.